Hello, subscribers, and otherwise not necessarily subscribers. Welcome to the inaugural episode of our new show, Pitch Please, that is going to be broadcast here from Valverde Broadcasting. I'm Duncan Casey, and with me, as always, is the less hirsute, but nevertheless not less astute, Richard Jackson.
Oh, thank you. I love introduction. We're using a spherical blue branded microphone that looks like a charred version of my head. It's very welcoming for an inaugural podcast.
Indeed. This is a show where we... it will evolve over time, but this is where we're going to pitch... each episode, one of us will come in with a film... that we will pitch either an alternative version to, or the idea will be to pitch a sequel that never happened to a film, and the idea will be to take films that are generally derided and didn't do too well and try and pitch how we would improve upon them or improve them by making a sequel to them that work better. That's quite loose, but I think
people get the gist.
I think you get the gist.
You get the gist.
So today it's Richard's turn to choose a film. So what have you got?
Well, I thought I had I had a better idea for Terminator Genisys.
There you go.
Or I think I had a better idea.
Right. I think we all did. It's not the best received of...
There are people in certain cities that get drunk and shout at traffic from roundabouts that have better pitches for Terminator Genisys, and maybe I stole mine from there.
Yeah. So the idea here will be for Richard to offer up his alternative pitch to me, and then for us to discuss it. And
I'm going to workshop it a little bit.
See what comes out.
Need it like a fine dough.
Yes, to see if it raises or if it falls into a flatbread. A nice flatbread, an unleavened flatbread, very nice.
Wholemeal.
Yeah.
So, in another place, in a different time, we did a commentary to Terminator Genisys, and I'm asked about Terminator Genisys almost weekly because people just want to have like jollies with me about how shit it is and stuff, and we always have a laugh on Twitter and stuff, and that's always welcome. Something come up in that I think is kind of a good idea, and I must say, something that I hear a lot in the discussion of films: having a good idea is not the same as having a good film.
Yeah.
And I've taken one fundamental piece from Terminator Genisys that I think you could use to sort of retool the whole thing.
Yeah.
Their twist seemed to be, what if John Connor was the Terminator?
Yeah.
Because they'd picked so many combinations of those words out of hats in the last pitch meetings, they clearly decided...
Wasn't that a holdover from Salvation, which was that he was going to turn out to be at the end?
Yeah.
And killed everyone, and then he's like... it's like almost like a Westworld, his face falls off.
He was going to be wearing... Marcus Wright was going to be wearing John Connor's skin, which makes about as much sense as doing a heart transplant in a desert. Oh wait, they did that, didn't they? For fuck's sake. But yeah, he was going to take Marcus's skin, and the idea was that John Connor died, right, and then Marcus took his place, and because they needed a figurehead. But the double version of that was that he was then going to kill them all, and his eyes would glow red. And it's kind of like, because they had quite a strong end to Terminator 3, as we've discussed.
Yes.
So, and I think they sort of wanted a shock ending for that as well, but schmear, like fuck knows.
Yeah.
So this is sort of what we discussed before, and I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but it is an idea. And this is how, if someone come to me and said, here's your mountain of cocaine and speedboat full of money, you're going to write Terminator Genisys.
Yeah.
And the whole idea has to revolve around John Connor being the bad guy.
Yeah.
Here's how I'd do it.
Okay.
Right. So one of the fundamental problems with the Terminator sequels is that it kind of ignores the coda of Terminator 2, which is essentially, we nailed that, guys. Okay, bye. So Sarah Connor goes like, it's all fine now. Here's some road. Bye. And then it ends.
Yeah.
So I want, my pitch is that comes to pass.
Right.
So it's 2029 and John Connor lives in a functioning world, still lives in California. Mm-hmm. You know, there's been no war, there's no machines.
Yeah.
I mean, the world as we know it pretty much exists. So sure, there's drone warfare and stuff, and there's those creepy kind of Asimo robots with rubber faces and whatever being chatted up by Will Smith on YouTube and stuff like that. That all exists. But John Connor has lost his mum, like Sarah has kind of passed away for whatever reason. So I'll hold that over from like T3.
Yeah.
But his life carries no meaning. And he saw these things and he lived these things, but they never really meant anything. And he might as well have imagined them. His mum's gone, all the evidence of the machines were gone, and he was supposed to be the grand leader of the human resistance in a kind of Tron-style disco laser war that never happened.
Yeah.
So he just kind of... He's never been able to make a job stick. He's never been able to make a relationship stick. He's just kind of depressed. This is a really fucking depressing pitch as well.
Sure.
He's really kind of depressed. He's really kind of washed up, and he's just become bitter at the fact that he never got to have the life he was promised. Even if it wasn't a nuclear wasteland, he would have had the eye.
He would have had meaning.
Yeah, he would have been humanity's messiah.
Yeah.
So John Connor, much like Genesis John Connor, who comes armed with all this technological knowledge, he's doing his absolute best to create Skynet. So if you have to have John Connor create Skynet, like in Terminator Genisys, that's what it's because he's an arsehole now, not because he's a magical Terminator from the future.
Yeah.
So he's trying to kind of build this stuff, and he's kind of quite techie because he does have a natural gift for it, and he's been working on things and using his knowledge to kind of get towards certain stuff.
Maybe that comes about because he's still anticipating it. Do you know what I mean? Like he's told this whole raison d'etre, his whole reason for being is to avoid this thing. So he's paranoid, so he's like keeping it. Anyway, sorry.
No. Please throw ideas in because there's not much meat on this bone. And he's attempting this, and then lo and behold, one day he's sort of like moving between his home and his kind of like creepy storage locker full of weird experiments, and a human being charges at him with a pistol and sort of tries to take him out. He kind of wins the struggle, and when he's fighting this person, he sees the kind of TechCom future Holocaust barcode on their wrist, and he realises that he's successfully created Skynet again at some distant point in the future, and instead of Skynet sending Terminators back to kill John Connor, now the human resistance are trying to kill John Connor because he's become the thing he hated.
Right.
And then I take it from there, and then get kind of mixed up with Terminators and stuff like that coming back. And what do you think about that?
I like it. No, I think that's a very human way into, and it makes total sense. I suppose, like the jumping off point we've always had with Terminator is that they shouldn't. Like, they shouldn't
just to be absolutely clear, just step this back. Don't.
Yeah,
we've said it a bunch of times. Just don't.
But because it invites things like, really at the end of Terminator 2, like John Connor, they both should have just disappeared, and Sarah should have been a whatever she would have been otherwise if that had never
waitress,
happened.
manager of the big boy restaurant, or whatever.
Yeah. And John would never have been born. So it's that thing of like, if you're resetting it literally to the point where the machines don't exist, then John Connor shouldn't exist. So it's like there's what's interesting there is that as part perhaps of the intro to it all is that John, a man without a purpose, and actually to get Eddie Furlong back, I think would be great, because
I don't mean to be cruel to Eddie Furlong, but it kind of fits, right?
Well, So to have that man without a purpose thing, and then for him to be sat around wondering why he still exists, because he must have pieced it together in his head. It's like, well, my mum and dad will never have met, so how am I still here?
This is some kind of temporal thing.
What was the and then you've got to kind of work backwards and go like, well, then did Terminator 1 happen? But this time it was like completely the opposite way around, where like the machine was trying to save her.
Well, that's the thing, because then you get this kind of it's the inverse Terminator.
Yeah.
It's someone living a normal life, being hunted by people.
Yeah.
Instead of someone leading a normal... It's someone oblivious... In the Terminator, Sarah Connor's obliviously leading a normal life. In Terminator Genisys 9, or whatever I'm going to call it, John Connor is begrudgingly living a normal life. So it's like the inverse version of Terminator.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well. I think like this kind of time travel that they come at him, I think I would probably have it be a woman or a girl that's younger than him, and I would have him win the fight.
Yeah.
And he realises not only has he killed this young woman... but she's starving and wasted. Like she's grown up in a nuclear holocaust, and it's been this desperate attempt. And then that maybe kind of makes him realise what he's done, but it's too late.
Right.
And he's created this situation. Because at some point, and that's another thing as well, you probably would have to have the machine of Skynet come back and protect John, like in Terminator 2, but it's protecting him for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And he's kind of teaming up. And actually, that's another thing I'd have. If the term... This is just kind of bleak cruelty. But if the Terminator has to protect John, I'd maybe even have John trying to kill himself, and the Terminator won't let him. So he keeps trying to, like, chuck himself off.
Which kind of happens in Terminator 3, sort of.
Kind of, yeah. Because he does a gun to his head and stuff. But I quite like the idea of the, John John Connor just necks a bunch of ibuprofen, and the Terminator shoves his fingers down his throat and gets it back. It's just, don't do that.
Well, then that invites actually quite an interesting thing. So later on is like, if John did succeed in topping himself, that Skynet literally rebuilt him into this horrible, like...
Oh, God,
you know what I mean?
You
That's
go full body horror.
Yeah.
Like, really horrible...
Like, we have to resurrect, he must be preserved, and it's like, literally, so he ends up, in the future, he's like this horrible hybridized, like... pipe sticking out of him.
Yeah, God, instead of the fucking, cool John Connor in a leather jacket, it's like this fucking awful thing pipes up the nose and a brain in a jar and lungs and stuff, like this. Because I think that's another thing, you could have that glimpse of his future.
Yeah.
And it's just this perpetually kept alive, like Giga-esque monstrosity. And then you get a whole body horror. This film would be a harrowing and bleak experience. Like, I'm not saying the Terminator's fun, because the Terminator is kind of bleak and dark, but this would be like just straight up just horrible and probably quite unpleasant to watch.
Because I think, but as it should be. Do you know what? The first Terminator is bleak.
Well, it's a horror movie.
It's a horror film, and it's like, and it needs to be so that you know what you're fighting for in the film, or what you're rooting for the people who are fighting for. You know what I mean? It's like the future must look horrible and bleak and awful. It has to, and that's why I think something like Salvation kind of drop the ball on that, because I mean, Lower it is a wasteland, but it's like, it doesn't seem that bad. You know what I mean, we can sort of hang out in.
Well, they've got planes and because it's people. It's sort of like a post-nuclear laser quest where you've got to eat rats.
Yeah.
But like in Terminator, it's like, oh, it's Mad Max, and you got planes, and we're all just hanging out in the daytime, and look at our cool outfits. It seems like
a very different world. I think I like that. I think that's a really good, a good way to look at it. I always thought of, like, with the first film and everything, the more you look at it as like a loop rather than a linear thing, it's like, it's almost like that Judgment Day and everything came about because at some point, because I've always had these crazy ideas where I'm like, I don't think time travel will ever exist, because if it did, we'd know about it now, even though we haven't created it. But someone would have travelled back to say, hey, guess what?
One of the theories is that and this is what's done in the film Time Crimes by Nacho Vigalondo. I can never say his name properly. Excellent movie. There's a concept that what would happen is you don't see those time travelers now, because if someone invented time in a time machine, it would be like a delivery system. So if you invented a time machine, which is essentially like a booth or a pod, as soon as you turn it on, the first time traveler would get out of it.
Yeah.
Because if you invent that one-way system, like kind of that one-way system going back, and it has to have a receiver, someone from the future is only going to be able to travel back to when that machine is extant and turned on.
Oh, okay.
So you would turn on your time machine, and then you'd get out with the eye patch.
Right.
Or someone, because they would want to travel back as far as possible, and that would be the only point they could do.
I see. Okay.
So someone would
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's what Time Crimes does that.
Okay.
And it's quite a nice way. I mean, we are in the realm of talk about time. Let's not get too carried away about what is basically a fictional concept.
It's kind of like they do in Deja Vu. Have you seen Deja Vu with Denzel Washington and stuff? Where it's kind of like they have a machine developed that's like design. It's a bit crazy, but he has this like helmet he can wear that sees however many days in the past, but it's like it runs concurrently, so you can't ever see further back.
Right.
And I don't know. And it's just
And
eventually they get to a point where they're able to put things in it to show the person in the past, and then eventually he manages to get in the machine, and so it acts like a time travel machine. Anyway, it's a bit silly, it's a bit daft, but it's actually quite. It's all right.
There was a TV show called 7 Days, American show that only had one season, and the idea was he could only travel back, like you say, it's concurrent. You could only travel back 7 days from the present date.
Right.
It would be like, oh, Brian, the president tripped out a brick.
Yeah.
You have to go back 3 days to find out who tripped out a brick. And then he goes back and speaks to all the building yards to see who's making that type of brick. That didn't actually happen, but.
So I mean, but the way that the Terminator series sort of seems to portray it is that like the machines only exist because at some point, because time travel was created, and a type of time travel that can put you anywhere geographically and in time. It's like any it's space-time displacement, so it can put you wherever you want to be in whatever time. Because purely because that technology at some point existed. The machines and the resistance and everything created itself just off the back of that, because it's like the Terminator that got sent back is what kicked off Skynet, and obviously, so it's almost like this weird twisted Garden of Eden scenario or whatever creationist thing, where it's like the whole future of the planet is created because someone created time travel. So within that, it's like you've then you're sort of delving into another loop of like, because they won the outcome. This is what trips up Genisys and stuff like that, is they had to go into all this time nexus bollocks, because it was like, well, if we're going to create an alternate thing, it's very hard to then say, well, then the future has to be. I know they talk about the future,
and then they go back and forward and stuff, and it's like, we've got to set this part in 2016 because we're bored of setting up costumes and haircuts.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, it's just like, I mean, that whole thing was a mess, man. It was absolutely just this big scattershot mess.
Totally.
And I'm not saying mine's better, but I think it's got kind of a through line. Whereas the Genisys was kind of this big, wonky cartoon.
Well, yours is character driven, which I like. So
yeah.
and that was the success of Terminator 2. I think that was, you forgive it because there are inconsistencies in it, and you can pick it apart. But fundamentally, the characters are pretty solid, and they do what you know them to be doing. That is what John Connor would do. That is what Sarah Connor would do. So it's all character led, and that, I think, is why your idea would work, because it's like, look, it's totally believable that would happen to John Connor. It's frustrating because at the start of Terminator 3 they kind of touch on that. They touch
on that, yeah.
Because he's a man at a time. He's a man...
Sort of get bored.
Yeah. It's almost like he's bored. But it's like, that is a good sort of loose thread to pluck at. And like someone who's sat around going, like, I shouldn't exist. Why the fuck do I exist? And then getting paranoid about why he still exists, because does that mean the machine will happen?
And for the very nature of his situation...
Yeah,
means that he could have imagined it all.
Yeah,
I mean, your mum's dead, and it's like Dr. Silverman says in the first Terminator film. He says, "Well, it's watertight."
Right.
This whole delusion, it's not really a delusion, but this whole delusion is watertight because of the time travel and everything has to be destroyed and everything cancels itself out.
Right.
You can say whatever you want within that fantasy.
Yeah.
So from John Connor's perspective, it's like, well, I never knew my dad. My mum told me all this stuff. I saw some robots when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I saw it pretty graphically, but that was a long time. I mean, I question what I had for fucking breakfast, you know what I mean? Let alone the time I met an Austrian cyborg.
Well, how old is he supposed to be in Terminator 2? Because I know that...
We had this discussion the other day, didn't we? Because I think he's supposed to be like 10 or 11.
Right.
But he's riding around on a motorbike.
Yeah.
I don't know how things go in the States, man. Nobody gave me a motorbike when I was 11. But I think it's because if you look at the computer in the police cruiser, it gives his age in the current year, because I think it was made in 91, but it's set in like 95 or something, or 94, because it would have been 10 years hence from the first Terminator.
Sure.
And then they kind of fluff that in Terminator 3 anyway by saying he was like 13.
Right.
So I can see why they did it, because it makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
This weirdly mature sort of kid in a Public Enemy t-shirt. But,
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense that he's sort of early to mid-teens.
And he would be kind of like, this is the thing, this would be like Lars von Trier's Terminator film. Like, he'd be kind of, because I suppose I'd be setting it, if he was born in 84, it makes him, well, he would have been born in 85, it makes him 2 years younger than us, but I would be setting it around the time of the future war from...
Well, 1 year younger than me.
You're only like 3 months younger than me. Or 6 months. Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's not get into that.
Yeah, no.
Terminator. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Right. I would set it at the time of the kind of future war. So it's supposed to be set at the time when he was supposedly at his peak.
Yeah.
So like 2029, 2027.
Yeah.
Putting him kind of pushing 50, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, he's like pushing 50, mid-40s, and he's supposed to be at the peak of this kind of military career where he's kind of...
Yeah.
And 2029 as well was when he's supposed to have won the war.
Right.
So it would be in the near future, but it would look like today as well. There'd be better phones and probably stupider haircuts and, you know, whatever. But it wouldn't be too distant. We're not like fucking flying cars and hoverboards.
Yeah.
You know, and you can, like, Genisys tried to lean on that kind of Silicon Valley Google shit, but just didn't do it properly.
Yeah.
'Cause it was supposed to be like, oh yeah, Skynet's like a tablet or something, whatever, Angry Birds. It never really, like, lent on that kind of Facebook social media, which people get annoyed by you, but you would kind of have to do if you're making kind of a tech-based film. I'm not saying lean on it completely, but he would live in the world of social media and, you know, different apps and
It was very happy. I mean, it sounded like, with Genisys it sounded like the machinations of like 60-year-old who has no idea about social media, and, like, you know, it was just like, oh yeah, connects everything. What if it connected everything? It's like that exists.
I know.
Fucking exists. Like,
that's the best part about the Genisys system. It's like, imagine like this computer, right, that could make phone calls and have your diary in it and take photographs. You could even... do you know what it reminded me of? It's like in school, it's like in 1996 when my IT teacher would talk about the internet.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, you could use it to order a pizza.
Yeah.
When they describe Genesis, it's like, we fucking got that, mate. That's Android.
Well, I think that was the inherent problem with the Terminator series, in that obviously the first two were able to lean more on that this is just a big supercomputer sort of hive that, like, you know, because
whereas it was playing to a less informed world and a less informed audience.
Yeah,
which now everybody knows fucking everything. You know,
there was oh dear, now this is annoying. It's either there's another YouTube channel, very well known YouTube channel. What is it? Is it Hybrid Network or
well, that sounds familiar.
Mr. H. I know him. He's very good. But it was one of those two who described Skynet and how it kind of, and it kind of came out of the 3D ride thing, which I hate. With the T-1000, that's just a big piece of metal spaghetti.
It's my college roommate.
Yeah, God. And that was made by Cameron as well. Sorry, James. I mean, I love you, but really.
Terminator 6 is going to be brilliant.
Yeah. He talked about how, like, basically Skynet, the reason why Skynet looked like a big pyramid and stuff in that was because it had been built into the side of it, like in a mountain, like kind of like crystal.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's sort of like within that mountain, it started just burrowing and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it either bursts out of the mountain or I think it ordered like a nuclear strike on the mountain to just destroy all to become this like monument to the machines, which you know. So it's like,
and it's a geometric shape. It's this dispassionate, featureless.
But the idea would be that it would stand as this thing, this like warning to man or whatever. Like it was built symbolically as well. That it just all the shell of nature gets destroyed. You know, so it's quite a good description of why Skynet is that and why, and it's also that it houses the factory for making all the Terminators. So that's quite cool. And I agree with that. So, and I think that has to stay. I mean, whatever it is, like Skynet has to remain like that. What's good about? Oh
no, I'm not into. Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not into making Skynet an app.
No,
which seems to be what Terminator 3 was like. Yeah, it's cyberspace, and Genesis like it's an app. No, I'm saying those things exist in the world, but no, it's a big, implacable, unknowable super machine.
Yeah, but may well, I guess, use the internet to like.
Oh, of course, yeah, you know, whatever, and all the machines are linked to it, you know, by Wi-Fi or whatever.
Yeah,
there's a series of novels called T2 Infiltrator.
Right.
You read those?
You've brought that up before. I haven't. No.
Yeah, they were kind of neat, man. They were not. I read the first two, and they're by I think he's called Jonathan Sterling or something.
Yeah.
But there is a description of like a captive human inside Skynet, and the corridors have no lights.
Yeah,
they're featureless black cuboids.
Right. Which makes sense.
Because why? They can see in the dark. They're not hanging up pictures of like that tennis girl scratching her bum. You know what I mean? It's just the thing. And you know, that's perfect. But then I've brought this up before, and I think it's worth bringing up time and time again. In Terminator Salvation, in the middle of Skynet, there's tables and chairs and keyboards and that. Like, it's like, you know, Keith's got a picture of his wife, his Terminator wife and kid, and he's having a mug of coffee, which he'd pour down his neck and just dribble out of his jaw.
Yeah. Well, because Marcus throws a chair through a window, and then it oddly just stops in midair because it's on a wire. Yeah. But like that, why is there a chair?
It's even funnier than the Terminator driving the truck in Terminator Genisys.
Yeah,
like, that's even funnier than that. Like, it's just you don't see, you know, a Terminator with a wrist rest. You know, like a Terminator having a cry in the corridor because someone made a snide remark about his cupcakes.
There might as well have been water coolers and shit, you know, and potted plants and
calendars and shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck? His idea was like, who approved that? But it should be this kind of. It's kind of like a. It springs out of the brutalist tradition, and it's often something that's done, or used to be done, really, in depictions of machine consciousness. It's the kind of featureless, functional utilitarianism of the machine, because the machine exists kind of in a kind of digital space where it does this kind of thinking. It doesn't require aesthetics.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing. Like the Terminator as a machine is an unaesthetic thing. It has to have the human skeleton shape to accommodate the skin, and then the rest is purely functional.
Yeah,
which is why in Terminator 3 that's full of fucking Christmas lights. It really pisses me off.
Yeah.
You know, like,
no, totally. Yeah, no, I mean it's nice as well to think that, like, because what I'm trying to do is take your version then of the sort of future and put that into the skin of that. So it would be interesting if, like, Skynet ended up still looking like that, but in the middle of it somewhere is just sort of twisted John Connor, like just plugged into everything.
Horrible.
And it's just like, and he's hanging in the whatever, and
I would even think about actually, because we're going into like double Skynet, so this is like the postponement of Judgment Day, which is horseshit. But hey, I've been forced to pitch Terminator Genisys. Maybe not even be a nuclear war. Like even if Skynet was able to win through an economic war, almost like starving people out, or chemical warfare that kept the cities intact,
right?
Because then you could have a kind of like
Omega Man type.
Exactly, kind of Omega Man type scenario with the Terminators and whatever, and you could have that juxtaposition of certain areas overrun, reclaimed by nature, whilst simultaneously being reclaimed by high technology, because they're governed by the machines, like something like that. And that's just spitballing.
Because I suppose in that scenario there wouldn't necessarily be the T-800s and because you wouldn't need those infiltrator units.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
I mean, from a filmmaking and marketing perspective, you'd have to put something in there, and it'd be nice to have some. I do like me a rabbit.
I have one right there. Say hello, Johnny. Hello, I'm a robot. Go back, Johnny.
It's from my favourite film, Short Circuits.
I'm standing here beside myself. I would just recast Short Circuit 2, but with South African actors. I think that's a great pitch. I think we should
arrive here?
I don't know.
Stop recording. We're going to go again.
But
my pitch is South African Short Circuit.
An alternate future.
So Ben's really depressed because the short circuits never happened. But now he lives in Johannesburg. It's Johannesburg.
Come with me if you want to stay alive.
Like me. My name's Johnny Five. I am at Neil Blomkamp's Short Circuit. I would actually. I've lost interest in Genesis. I want
who has
South African Short Circuit now.
Short Circuit.
Gobble
gobble. Look, I think that is a great pitch. I think it's got legs. And I know I would rather have. That is a way more interesting direction to go than obviously where we went.
Because that had my problem with that had no direction.
Yeah. I mean, it flailed around and sort of tried to come back. It basically did the literal thing that, like, so like with Terminator 3 and stuff, we've often complained about that it is a lazy retread of Part 2. And there were these tropes they tried to get in. To Salvation's credit, they didn't do that. They still had to get an Arnie in, and they had to have a final showdown with the T-800. But nevertheless, the meat of that film was its own thing, more or less. But again with Genisys, they literally went back and they said, well, what if we just literally remade bits from the first film and stuff like that? And again, didn't really work. But you had to have the same old tropes, the same old sort of like two Terminators fighting, blah blah blah. And the twists they put in weren't good enough, and they weren't character driven, predominantly, for the most part. So I think as a jumping off point, that's absolutely great. Where it will get to, I don't know. And like you say, from a marketing standpoint, because it'd be very hard then to get.
It's horrible, like Ken Loach's Terminator Genisys. This is really bleak.
But in order to have that kind of merit, I think it has to be that way. So no, I think I give your pitch. I don't know.
Oh, shit, we have to improvise a rating system.
Oh no!
You may have noticed, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a fully formed format.
No. I would say that. Well, I don't know because I've got good. I will give it seriously good 5 endoskeletons out of 6.
Oh, 5 out of 6. Thank you very much.
I don't know where it would go to. I don't know how you'd reach a third act with all that, but I think it's
there's a nub.
There's definitely a better jumping off point there than what was there before. So yes, excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Jackson. That was a really great pitch, please. First inaugural episode of Pitch Please, and we hope to welcome you back again soon for another episode of Pitch Please. And this has been fun. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.